The Arizona desert stretched endlessly under the burning sun, the highway a lonely ribbon cutting through silence. Officer David Carter squinted against the glare, his patrol cruiser humming steadily along the empty road. Beside him, Rex, his loyal German shepherd, shifted suddenly. The dog's ears shot up, his body stiffening, a low growl vibrating in his chest. David followed Rex's gaze. Up ahead, a rusty truck sat awkwardly on the roadside, engine still running. The driver's figure slouched against the wheel, but something about the stillness didn't feel right. David's instincts told him to keep driving, but Rex barked sharply, claws scraping against the window. His body pulled taut with tension. David slowed the cruiser, heart thudding. "Easy, boy," he murmured, though his grip on the wheel tightened. The desert wind whipped dust across the truck's tires, but Rex wouldn't stop barking. His growl deepened, hackles raised, every muscle screaming danger. David pulled over behind the truck, adrenaline flooding his veins. He reached for his radio, but Rex was already lunging against the door, frantic. Something inside that truck was wrong, terribly wrong. For the first time in years, David felt a chill crawl up his spine. Rex had never been wrong before. David stepped cautiously out of the cruiser, one hand resting near his holster. The heat pressed down like a weight, but his focus was locked on the silent truck. Rex leapt out after him, tugging hard on the leash, nose lowered, sniffing the air with urgency. "Stay alert, boy," David whispered. The closer they got, the stronger Rex pulled. Suddenly, the dog let out a sharp bark, straining toward the back of the truck. David's pulse spiked. He glanced through the dusty side window, nothing visible, but Rex's growl deepened his body, rigid every sense, screaming alarm. David rapped on the driver's door. "Police, step out of the vehicle," no answer. He tried again, louder. Still silence. His eyes narrowed. With one swift motion, he yanked open the door. The driver slumped sideways, alive, but unconscious, sweat dripping down his temples. Before David could react, Rex darted toward the rear cargo door, barking furiously. David followed, his gut twisting. He pulled the latch. The metal creaked open, and then it hit him, a faint whimper. A child's voice. David froze, the desert air suddenly colder. Rex barked again, pawing at the dark interior. Something or someone was inside. David's heart pounded as the cargo door groaned open. A wave of stifling heat and the smell of sweat and dust spilled out. At first he saw only darkness, then movement. Small shapes shifting, trembling. Rex surged forward, barking, but not in anger, his tone urgent, commanding David's attention. Then the sound came clearer, muffled sobs, fragile voices. David froze. Children. "Hold on, kids," he said, his voice breaking the heavy silence. He unclipped Rex's leash, and the German shepherd leapt into the truck, tail low, posture gentle. The dog nosed through the shadows, weaving between hunched figures. David pulled out his flashlight, the beam cutting through the dark. His breath caught. 12 children, thin, dirty, terrified, stared back at him, their wide eyes glistening. Some clutched each other. One little girl clung to Rex's fur, as if she'd known him forever. "Dear God," David whispered, throat tight. He quickly scanned them for injuries. No obvious wounds, but exhaustion and fear etched into every face. Behind him, the unconscious driver stirred. David's instincts flared. Whoever this man was, he wasn't innocent. "Dispatch, this is Officer David Miller," he said into his radio, voice firm but trembling with urgency. "I need immediate backup. I've got multiple children recovered. 12 total. Repeat, 12 missing children. Location, Route 87, Arizona desert. Send medical units ASAP." Rex stayed in the truck, pressing close to the children, his steady presence calming their panic. For the first time since he opened that door, David felt hope. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as flashing red and blue lights streaked across the barren desert highway. Within minutes, patrol cars and ambulances skidded to a halt beside David's cruiser. Dust rose in swirling clouds as paramedics rushed forward with stretchers, water bottles, and medical kits. David stepped aside, guiding the frightened children towards safety. Rex refused to leave their side, moving with them like a guardian shadow. The kids clung to his fur, their faces softening for the first time since rescue. 2 officers dragged the truck driver from the cab, handcuffing him roughly against the hood of a squad car. His face now pale and slick with sweat, twisted in anger rather than fear. "Name's Carl Jensen," one officer muttered, flashing David a grim look. "He's on a watch list." suspected of trafficking across state lines. David's stomach churned. He had seen cruelty in his career, but this children packed into a stifling truck was something else entirely. The lead detective approached his tone sharp. "We've been tracking Jensen for months. We never thought we'd catch him out here in the desert. You and your dog may have just cracked a case bigger than we imagined." David glanced at Rex, who sat with his ears pricked, eyes still locked on the restrained man, as if daring him to move. One paramedic turned to David, voice hushed with awe. "If you hadn't stopped him, those kids might never have been found." The detective leaned closer, lowering his voice. This wasn't his first run, but thanks to Rex, it'll be his last. David exhaled slowly, realization settling over him. This night wasn't just about rescue, it was about justice. The children sat in a tight circle on the edge of the ambulance bay, wrapped in blankets handed out by paramedics. Their faces were pale, eyes darting nervously at every sudden sound. Most hadn't spoken a word since being freed, their silence heavy with fear. Rex padded quietly toward them, his steps slow and deliberate. He didn't bark or rush, he simply lowered himself onto the ground, nearby resting his head between his paws. His steady presence drew their eyes. At first, no one moved. Then a small boy with tear-streaked cheeks shuffled forward, hesitating, before reaching out a trembling hand. Rex didn't flinch. Instead, he wagged his tail once, slow and deliberate, before nudging his nose gently into the boy's palm. The boy's lips quivered, then curved into the faintest smile. That was all it took. One by one, the children reached out, touching Rex's thick fur, leaning against him, as though he were the safest place in the world. Their whispers grew louder, their breathing steadier. Laughter, fragile but real, broke through the night air for the first time. David watched quietly from a distance, his chest tightening. He had seen Rex save lives before, but this was different. Tonight wasn't about chasing criminals or finding evidence. Tonight was about mending broken spirits. As the paramedics exchanged glances of relief, David whispered, "Good boy, Rex. They needed you more than I did." Rex lifted his head, amber eyes gleaming as if he already knew. By morning, the desert had transformed into a hive of flashing lights and police activity. Agents from multiple agencies crowded around the truck, combing through every corner. Boxes of false IDs, burner phones, and maps marked with routes across the border painted a chilling picture. This wasn't a random abduction, it was part of something much larger. Detective Sarah Lee, a sharp-eyed investigator in her 40s, leaned against the hood of her car, scanning the files. "This isn't the first time," she muttered. "It's a pipeline." David stood beside her, Rex at his heel, both listening intently. Which means, David added grimly, whoever was driving that truck isn't working alone. As if to confirm his words, Rex suddenly perked up, his nose flaring. He tugged at his leash, leading them toward a pile of discarded clothing behind the truck. Beneath it, officers uncovered another phone, still buzzing with incoming messages. On the screen, a chilling text glowed, "Next shipment due by dawn." The weight of the discovery pressed on everyone. They hadn't just rescued 12 children, they had stumbled into the center of an active trafficking ring. And Rex had just given them their first real lead. The discovery of the phone changed everything. Officers scrambled to trace the messages while David tightened Rex's harness, knowing the dog was ready for more. Within minutes, a signal pinged from an abandoned warehouse 20 miles away. The convoy of patrol cars tore across the desert highway, red and blue lights flashing against the dawn sky. David rode in the lead, Rex pressed against the door, ears alert, as if he already knew what awaited them. When they arrived, the warehouse doors were chained shut. Silence hung heavy until Rex barked sharp and urgent. He pulled David toward a side entrance, pawing furiously at the rusted metal. With a nod from Sarah, officers stormed the building. Inside, chaos erupted. Several men tried to flee, but Rex lunged, tackling one to the ground with controlled precision. Officers secured the others, while in the corner, hidden behind crates, more children huddled together, wide-eyed and trembling. Sarah's voice cracked as she called over the radio. "We've got them alive!" David dropped to his knees, hugging Rex tightly. "You did it, boy! You saved them all!" This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was the dismantling of a chain of cruelty, and Rex had been the key. The warehouse raid marked the end of a nightmare. The rescued children were taken to the hospital, where doctors and counselors welcomed them with warmth and care. For the first time in weeks, they had clean clothes, warm meals, and gentle voices reassuring them that they were finally safe. Sarah stood by their side, her heart swelling with relief. News of the rescue spread like wildfire. the small Arizona town that once held its breath in fear now gathered in celebration. Parents wept openly, clutching their children, whispering endless thanks to the officers and especially to Rex. At the station, a ceremony was held. Officers stood in formation, and their badges gleaming as David and Rex stepped forward. The German Shepherd sat tall and proud, ears perked, eyes shining with quiet strength. The chief placed a medal on Rex's vest, the crowd erupting into applause. David crouched down, resting his forehead against Rex's. "You're more than a partner, you're a hero," he whispered. For the children, Rex wasn't just the dog who found them, he was the symbol of courage that gave them a second chance at life. And for David, Rex was proof that sometimes hope wears 4 paws and a beating heart. The story of Rex and the rescued children reminds us that courage and compassion can come from the most unexpected places. In a world often filled with fear, uncertainty, and cruelty, one dog's instinct and loyalty changed the course of 12 young lives. This teaches us that even in the darkest situations, hope can appear if we remain vigilant, brave, and willing to act. Rex's actions also highlight the importance of trust. Officer David trusted his partner's instincts, even when logic alone might have questioned it. In our own lives, this reminds us to listen not only to reason, but also to intuition, empathy, and the quiet signals that something may be wrong. Most importantly, the children's rescue proves that no one is ever too lost to be saved. With the right help and protection, healing and new beginnings are always possible. The lesson we can carry is simple, yet profound. True strength lies in standing up for the vulnerable being, a voice for those who cannot speak, and believing that our choices, no matter how small, can save lives.